Good morning, everyone. It is my great joy and privilege on behalf of the Saïd Business School community to say three things. First, we are so glad that you are here today, that you have made your way to Oxford. Welcome to Oxford. Second, you are welcome in this place. We believe that this is a community that we want to draw more and more people into. And third, we believe that you are here for a reason today. And so your presence here has a purpose, and we are so glad that you have taken your time. You've made the effort to travel here, and so we are so glad to welcome you to the Oxford Business Forum Africa 2019. So welcome. Thank you for coming today. My name is Wes Carpenter. I'm an MBA student here at the Saïd Business School, and I will serve as our Master of Ceremonies today, and hopefully will move us along through our timeline. I'm sorry that we're starting a few minutes late. We are going to try to keep up with our timeline throughout the rest of today. But before I introduce our first speaker, I have a few things, points of note that are going to be helpful as we make our way through the day. The first is sort of a health and safety briefing. Just so you know, we have not planned any fire drills today. So if the fire alarm does go off, we're going to ask that you exit either through the two doors at the top of the room or the two doors behind me. That means that we should actually leave the building and meet out front. The second thing I want to make sure you're aware of is that we have an app associated with today's conference called Swap Card. And you might see some signage out in the foyer. Maybe there's something on the screen in a minute. But if you haven't downloaded this app, it's an opportunity for you to connect with the other delegates and speakers, to know the timeline. And it's a really helpful way that you can follow along with the day that we're having. We would also encourage you to, if you're into the social media thing, to post with the hashtag OxfordBFA. We want to share what's going on here with people outside of this room. And you should also know that today's events are being live streamed. And so you're at the center of something that is a broader conversation that many, many people, even beyond this room, are a part of. Finally, you should know that at lunchtime we have two special opportunities. One, we will have an employer network in Seminar Room A, and there will be signage to direct you that way. And then two, we're going to have a special lunchtime session called Rebranding the Africa Narrative. And so that's going to start at 12:45, and we'll give you more detail on that later. And all of this information is in the app that we've mentioned just now. So now I have the great privilege of introducing our first speaker of the day. He is a friend, he is a fellow classmate, and he is a very unique MBA. The reason I say that he is very unique is that most people come to business school to land a better high-paying job, and Rajiv came to business school to land a zero-pay job as the chairman of this forum. And so we need to appreciate him for the effort in leading so many of our classmates and putting this on today, all with no pay. So maybe he'll get a great job down the road, but he hasn't been paid for this yet. And it's my pleasure to welcome Rajiv to the stage for our welcome address.
Just before I start, I'll be outside during the lunch break taking donations for my Rajiv Daya unemployment fund. So please feel free, your generosity will be appreciated. Sanbonani, Dumelang, Salam alaikum, Bonjour, Hola, How far? Good morning. Karibuni sana and welcome to the 2019 edition of the Oxford Business Forum for Africa. On behalf of the Africa Business Alliance at Saïd Business School, it is my distinct pleasure to host you today as we welcome distinguished guests, global thought leaders, business leaders, academics, students, private sector, public sector, proponents of the Africa story, cynics of the Africa story, our online viewers. This is truly an inclusive discussion. And of course, forums like these are only made possible through the hard work and dedication of our committee and the continued support of our partners. So to Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Brand SA, we thank you for your generosity and your kind support. Ladies and gentlemen, my task this morning is twofold. Number one, I want to take you through the agenda for the day and sort of set the scene. And number two, I want to tell you a bit more about why this particular forum is important for us as the Africa Business Alliance. And to do that, I'm going to focus on two words: vision and action. Sorry, let me go through that again. We're in the era of social media. So the two words are #vision and #action. So let's begin. #vision. In March 2018, 44 countries signed the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. As of today, 52 of the 55 nations have signed, and 18 of 22 required have ratified. An agreement that, if ratified, will be the largest free trade area in the world by number of countries. But what does that mean? What does that mean for me if I am a CEO in Johannesburg, an entrepreneur in Lagos, a doctor in Nairobi, an engineer in Cairo? We all have our own view of what we want our utopian Africa to be. So, for argument's sake, let's call it Aftopia. #Aftopia. We can only truly mobilize people when they feel that they're moving in the direction of their Aftopia. And what agreements like this do is they provide a framework, a blueprint, a roadmap to start this discussion about what we want our collective Aftopia to be. So as we progress through the day, I encourage you, take the facts and the figures and the narrative and digest that in a way that resonates with you, based on your personal circumstances, based on what you want for your Aftopia. Because the Africa of tomorrow starts with our actions today. And to echo the words of our keynote speaker last night, Mr. Runma Ote, if not us, then who? And if not now, then when? #action. How many people here leave conferences feeling, well, this was a good discussion, but what are the follow-ups? What is the action? Show of hands? Yeah? That's why, for me, this is incredibly exciting, because the beauty of this particular forum is that we're having an interactive dialogue at the intersection of business and academia. It's the fact that we can walk outside, as Wes has mentioned, and speak to potential employers if we're interested in African opportunities. It's the fact that Saïd is one department within an array of disciplines across the Oxford ecosystem that promotes this idea of leveraging our resources to solve global challenges. Some of you use this as an opportunity to network, some to find jobs, and for some, it can change the course of your life. I consider myself to be one in that category. 4 years ago, in 2015, I attended this forum for the first time. I happened to be in London, and a friend of mine told me that he was going to Oxford for an Africa forum. I didn't know much about the forum, and not much about Oxford, to be honest. Apologies to the dean. Being from South Africa, you could also probably say that I didn't really know much about what was going on in the rest of the continent. So when I got here, I was introduced to the entrepreneurial flair of West Africa. I was introduced to the vibrancy of East Africa. I was introduced to how mobile money has been adopted and taking over. I then walked outside to the reception area during one of the breaks and overheard the dean talk to people about how he and his wife are personally committed to the continent through funding an Africa scholarship. And slowly but surely, my interest started to peak. I think the final nail in the coffin was the after party that night. So if you're hanging around tonight, please do join us. On a serious note, I returned to South Africa, and I knew that I had to partake in this movement across the continent. I knew that I had to immerse myself in the enormous activity that was taking place. And so in 2015, a few months later, I moved to Nairobi, not knowing anyone there, but wanting to be part of this movement. And through a series of events, Oxford just came up time and time again in my life, from Mkopa to people who I lived with, to the businesses that I engaged with, until eventually I met Tammy Brophy in Nairobi. And for those of you who don't know Tammy, who's standing at the back, Tammy spends most of her time traveling across the African continent, recruiting talent for the MBA program. And I knew then that I had to apply to this program to really propel my career and to make a difference on the continent. So, in a circuitous and serendipitous manner, I guess, I stand in front of you today as the chairman of the forum that resulted in me taking a more Pan-African approach, not only to my career, but to my life. And conveniently, that's very fitting for today's theme. So, why do I say this? I encourage you to be present today. Take advantage of the opportunities and make time for serendipity. Speaking of #action, we're truly grateful and blessed to have the perspectives of some of Africa's trailblazers with us today, who have graciously given of their time to be with us. So what can we expect as we progress through the day? We know we have a trade agreement in place which needs to be ratified, but what we want to dig a bit deeper into is, how does that practically get implemented? What do we need to think about from a policy perspective, from an infrastructure and power perspective? How do we practically implement this trade agreement? We then address the practicalities. Of course, increased commercial activity also requires funding. And so we examine whether there's been effective funding or whether we need to find more tailored financing solutions or vehicles to provide the financial impetus to really stimulate inclusive economic growth in a sustainable manner. Now, having a #vision is one thing, but being able to articulate that thought is another. And so we're really excited, as Wes mentioned, to be talking about branding the African narrative during our lunchtime session today. Finally, we'll be synthesizing all of this information and talking about how we materialize this concept of Africa 2.0. How do we leverage technology? How do we leverage our competitive advantage? What do we need to do to push this forward? So if after all of this, you don't meet someone who's inspiring, you don't listen to something that's inspiring, you don't hear about a policy that resonates with you personally, well then, there will be wine at the drinks reception after. And so, in closing, while today is about learning from the wealth of experience that you're going to hear from on stage today, present company excluded, of course, it's about finding something that truly resonates with you on a personal level. It's about something that speaks to your #vision, something that speaks to your #Aftopia. As Nelson Mandela said, action without vision is merely passing time. Vision without action is merely daydreaming. But vision with action can change the world. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Africa Business Alliance at Saïd Business School, I officially welcome you to this thought-provoking journey with us today.